Okay, it is 5:30 on Tuesday, September 17th, and we will call to order our study session for the draft 2025 Quincy Farm Annual Plan projects, and we'll start with not Manager Black.
Oh,
We will just go directly to Ellen Thompson.
Yes,
from the
hello.
Hills Land Preserve, so thank you.
thank you. Emily is very ill. She even got pink eye today, so I think we're all very happy she's at her home convalescing.
Get better, Emily.
Yes, so she asked me to cover this for her, so I'll do the best I can. But, so tonight is about the proposed projects. So this is not the full plan. It is the projects with a cost to the city in it, so. This was developed jointly over the last few months with city staff and Cherry Hills Land Preserve. And it's organized east side, west side, and then one thing for the full property. And we are eager to get your feedback as we develop the full plan down the road. And I don't think you're going to see anything crazy here. To me, it's a logical progression from where we were in 2024, focusing, continuing to revitalize the east side, and then beginning to consider options for the west side. So on the east side, the big barn, the major rehabilitation project begins this year, but it will bleed into next year. Next year will be a lot of just interior, smaller projects like a ribbon wall, pictures, recognition plaques. And speaking of the big barn, we will be presenting our donation. What did I say? I think on the 15th of October. Yes, October 15th. And we are at, right now, $125,000 towards the $150,000 goal. Yay, that's good.
Thank you so much. That is great news.
So we're still working on it, and we know we can get there. In terms of the farmhouse, that is, we're proposing the city do a feasibility study, and that's to evaluate the extent of the asbestos remediation and installing an ADA compliant bathroom and looking at things perhaps like a roof replacement. So no actual construction in 2025, but a feasibility study of how to address the project for the following year. And then landscape plan. That is just on the east side. I don't think we're ready to do this big full property thing yet. And the staff would do it, but with help from CHLP in terms of design. So where to put flower beds, where to put a trail, because we'd be looking at the visitor experience when you go onto the site, and then working with staff to implement it. And then pastures, that's just continuation of remediating the weeds and figuring out a cover like sorghum. So I don't think anything there has changed. And then hold on. Sorry. The footbridge, Emily tells me a lot of work was done this year, sending out a request for qualifications. CHLP helped decide the dimensions of the bridge, and Emily has priced that out. And in 2025, it would be actually implementing or doing the bridge work. So west side, the city already has cost estimates for redoing the exterior of the house, from what I understand from Emily. This would focus more on accessibility upgrades, like how do you access the house and how to turn that existing bathroom into an ADA accessible bathroom. And then pond, continuation of the project. Emily told me that the plan will be out to bid November, and they will start the project before the end of this year, and they are planning to avoid the migratory bird nesting season.
Does that pond freeze? Is that a consideration in the timing or no? Or maybe that's better.
Well, the the pond would be drained,
Yeah.
but it's the frost won't be
I guess
deep
it,
enough.
I guess it won't freeze if it's
No,
empty.
if it's empty. Correct.
Good point. Thank you.
I could have even come up with that
I
one.
probably could have gotten there myself, actually.
Since you were on the Hopkins house,
Yes.
you're talking about doing a feasibility study on accessibility. And I don't know, Jay, but I mean, we wouldn't do anything to that house before we've done an assessment about what it's going to take to stabilize it, right? I mean, there's a lot of structural damage on that house. There's cracks all over it. I mean, I don't know whether that's a big deal or not, but I couldn't imagine that we'd actually do anything to do something with the bathrooms or whatever without actually dealing with
No, and that would be part of the
that assessment.
that assessment is to look at all of those structural things, and then also at the same time look at, you know, is it possible to make an accessible bathroom, or, you know, how close can we get because it's a historic home without you know, upsetting any of that too. So that would all be part of that assessment at the same time.
Good, thanks.
Signage, again, we don't think we're ready for a full property, big, expensive signage initiative. We think that having one sign in the barnyard, an interpretive sign describing the history of Quincy Farm, and then somehow have, I don't know, we called it a box with a visitor's guide in it. Just, again, looking at that visitor experience, telling them what they can do at the farm besides walk on the gravel, look around, and leave. The other one that we identified is right outside the Hopkins house. Super simple, just when was it built and what is the historic significance of that. I'm going to add here, we could do a sign for the pond, which I think would be great. It would be wonderful to have people know that this is a Quincy Farm pond and all the work that's being done has been done by the city of Cherry Hill. So I wanted to add that in. This is the budget. It's the city budget, and Emily has said that projects, $551,000, maintenance and utilities is $140,650. And at the end of this packet, you have a breakout of that. And again, this is the city's budget, the CHLP budget. First of all, we're going to continue to work on closing the gap and completing our contribution to the barn next year. It's not as easy as it may sound. So we're continuing to do that. We also will be working on our own budget for all the programs, the outreach, the marketing, and there's going to be a lot of it next year because it's all going to be focused on promoting the renovated barn. So we're thinking of doing a donor dinner, you know, a ribbon cutting, a summer solstice event in June. So I think there's going to be a lot of activities, and they need to be promoted and planned and of course fundraised for us to be able to do those things. So next steps is the full plan. That's where we talk about the accomplishments both the city and CHLP has done this year in 2024. And again, the events, the audience, the promotion, all of that will be in the full plan. And according to Emily, we're going to be doing that on November 19th.
And just to add on to that, thank you. I do think that we also have the Land Preserve scheduled on October 15th for them to present, and consistent with the sort of like the bench program, the donations for the barn. So it won't be for the entire amount, but it's going to be for a vast majority of that amount. So again, yet more progress as we keep marching towards fully utilizing the Quincy Farm project.
Okay,
Okay.
great.
Are there any questions? Yep, Counselor Holland.
One of the things that wasn't in there, and I'm sure maybe it's considered detail, but I mean, you didn't have anything here about programs for next year. And, you know, that obviously is a highlight. It's been amazing the success that's been growing, and obviously interested in what you have planned for next year and what you're thinking about all that.
Yeah, and that, again, it's certainly not the detail. It's a really important part of what we do. And I'm calling that the full plan. This was literally just the projects. But, I mean, we keep, in terms of accomplishments in programming this year, we had a few more programs, but a lot more people this year, even than last year, which was going from 400 visitors to 820. And I believe we had over 800, Earl, I think I mentioned that to you, before any sort of barn party and a big adventures in nature. So we're tracking very well. We did some new programs this year. One that was the highlight was this flower arranging by Cindy Overhart, who's a resident, and she's with Flower Power, if you ever use that, florist. And we had about 18 adults in there, and just, it was amazing. Everyone walked out with this beautiful arrangement, and people couldn't, we're in this beautiful barn, the sun is setting. It just couldn't have been greater. I got so many compliments on that, saying, when's the next one? Cindy's already planning to have a whole series next year, so we'll expand on that. The gardening was a huge hit. That's endless. It's hard to garden in Colorado, so literally it's endless of, the tips, and half don't even work, but anyway. For kids, we did a Young at Art with the Cherry Hills Village art teacher, and they gathered sticks and they created these beautiful arrangements, and it was awesome. The parents loved it, and they became quite creative themselves. So we did that actually twice this past summer. So those are some of the newer ones. We'll get back to the horses next year. That's such an important part of the Pony Club tradition here. We didn't do any this year because I never knew when the barn was going to be under construction when I had to make the plan. So I kind of punted on those for the year. But finally, the biggest thing we can do, the Earth Day, for anyone was here, we would have done it next month for Adventures in Nature. But when you have farmyard animals and families, it doesn't get any better than that. I mean, I still hear it from people. And really, that's the way we're promoting, the farm. And those people turn into people who come to the barn party and then write us a check for the annual fund and tell all their friends. One thing I am proud of is the new ambassadors. We got 4 new ones, and they're all, no offense to people maybe who are over 60. They are a different demographic. They are the younger group. They're the newer residents here. And that is the key to sustainability for Quincy Farm. All my friends, and look at you all for the barn party. I'm traveling. Oh, I've got a wedding. But kids, parents with kids, they have to be here in September. So that has been my strategy. And we have 4 new ambassadors, and they got more young people. You were at the barn party. People came up to me saying, wow, this is great. They're like, people my age, Ellen. I'm like, well, I'm so sorry for not being your age, but they were really pumped up. And I think those people don't have any history. All they want to do is make friends here. They're new to the neighborhood. They've got years ahead of them. So those are some of the things that we accomplished this year, but also will continue for next year.
Great. Yeah, that was always my recollection of the barn party was, the place where you go to meet people in the community and make some new friends. And other questions? Councilor Sheldon.
Thanks for the presentation. I assume while the big barn is under construction, there's a plan to keep programming going during that entire process on the east side, and certainly as well as on the west side for whatever we can program on the west side. Have we got a construction plan as far as fencing and keeping the thing as much of it open to the public as we can?
Yes. There's been some changes. We're trying to work through those, but a majority of it, they can still walk through all the pastures, but there will be some closed areas around the barn and the house on the east side.
And I know at one point, I think Mayor Chrisman and I were out on site talking about possibly making the little spot when you pull in on the left parking. Is that part of the budget and plan that we're working on here? Do you recall what I'm talking about? I know,
It is
is that part
not,
of the plan to make,
it is not at this point.
not at that point?
Good idea, but it's not.
Yeah, I think that'd be great if we had some dedicated parking right inside the access.
Yeah, and it's on our list.
Okay,
And it hasn't fallen off, it just hasn't come to the top yet.
Okay.
And mostly because our contractor may need to use that as access through. So we didn't want to improve that because it gets so narrow between the little barn and the caretaker's house. They think they can make it, but we wanted to make sure that if they needed that access, they could do that.
okay.
And are you thinking, Dan, for handicap parking? Because right now, other than maintenance vehicles, city vehicles, there is no vehicles are allowed on the property.
Per the conservation easement or?
Per our policy as the city.
So what I had talked about on site with Mayor Chrisman was that there's an area that would take maybe 8 cars.
Right.
Put some crusher fines down or something like that, some road base, I don't know, we probably don't pave it. But I think it'd be nice to be able to have a spot for people to land if they're actually, that is their destination. Hopefully they don't abuse it and go park there to go do other things within the village or even go outside the village down the canal. Hopefully they're there specifically to be on site at Quincy Farm, but I think it'd be good. If it's not a big budget line item, I'd like to see that maybe get moved up closer towards the top once the big barn and the staging or vehicle, construction access is complete. I'd like to see some parking land there to get it there.
Well, and I think that's one of the things that we do as we move forward. Everything has to be done sort of consciously, right? I mean, in other words, if we sit back and go, okay, we want to have parking. It's not just, well, we got a spot, we'll put it in, we'll go, okay, we're going to change our policy. We're going to make it, we're going to change that, and we're going to do it forthrightly. For instance, right now, there's also dogs aren't allowed on the property, but I know there's discussion saying, well, maybe we should. Maybe that'll happen, but that'll be done consciously. That'll be done as a decision. That's one of the things I think that we always have to do with regard to conservation easement and protecting the farm is we're very deliberate about what we do and how we do it, and if we're going to make a change, why we're making that change and why we think that it makes sense. So I'm just saying that would be a process that we do, I think.
No, that's fine. I have no problem with making it a formality through the council. I just think it's something that should be thought about, and it'll probably be at a time after I've rolled off. So I'm charging you with adding parking to your thought process on a go-forward basis.
Yes, and I made a note of that to talk to Emily.
And Dan, we're also looking at, and you've probably seen them and not known you've parked on it, where there's still grass growing.
Right.
Where it's not a gravel lot, where it looks just like a field and you mow it, but it's got certain grids underneath it so you can park on it. And to your point, we would also look at having a gate, so it was only for events at the farm, so it wouldn't be open
For the Highline
for
Canal.
the Highline Canal, a new trailhead. It would just be specific for
I think
programming.
that's great.
And we think that's a terrific idea for anybody who lives around there to see the grass, and then all of a sudden it's a parking lot, it goes back to being grassy.
But again, that would come to council before we made any.
I know that parking has been a sensitive issue for
Yes.
the neighbors, and so I agree with Councilor Holen and that it would have to be a really deliberate process.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? I think it sounds really exciting. Thank you very much to the Land Preserve again for your partnership in this endeavor. We really do appreciate it. No, we couldn't do it without you, and look forward to seeing the plan, the full plan, when that's available.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
It is 5:50, and we call our study session to a close. The regular meeting doesn't start until 6:30, so we will recess until then. Tuesday, September 17th, and I will call to order the city council meeting. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Counselor Eber?
Here.
Counselor Hollen?
Here.
Counselor Wheel?
Happy to be here.
Counselor Sheldon?
Is here, sorry.
Here.
Counselor Blum?
Here.
Counselor McGuire is absent.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Next is a presentation from our police department. Chief Lyons. Very excited to hear about this certification presentation.
Yes, I feel slightly bad. As you know, I lured, I'm very strong. I lured John Reynolds here under the guise that he would be making a presentation to council. And really, the presentation is all about him and his celebration of a milestone. So good evening, Mayor, members of council. I'd like to take a few minutes to recognize John Reynolds and his service to the city of Cherry Hills Village. Admittedly, when someone says 30 years, if you're like me, you think 1970 something and not 1994. But either way, 1994 was a year, the year of the infamous white Bronco pursuit with O.J. Simpson, the year that Jeff Bezos started Amazon in his garage, the year that Friends aired for the first time, the year that John's boss graduated high school. But more importantly, the year that John Reynolds started his career as a full-time police officer here in Cherry Hills Village. As John tells the story, and he and I have talked a lot about this over the years, he started here in 1992 as a reserve officer when his father, a career-long Denver police officer, told him to find a place to work that shared his values, that would allow him for growth in his chosen career and that would allow him to find balance in his life. And when that opportunity of full-time employment occurred 2 years later, John took advantage of that and never looked back. 30 years in this profession is a challenge for anyone. 30 years with the same employer has become rarer and rarer. His 30 years has been filled with some amazing accomplishments, and I'll just note a few. As a police officer, John took on additional responsibilities such as an arrest control instructor, a firearms instructor, and for many years was actually one of the first canine handlers at a time when he had to buy his own dog and transport that dog to and from work in his personal vehicle. And when his wife, Deanna, was the bite decoy. So we don't allow for that so much anymore, but true enough. John had a passion for DUI enforcement, and in 2005 received an award from Mothers Against Drunk Drivers for those efforts. John was named Officer of the Year for heroic actions in a rescue attempt after 3 employees working on a water main break at the Cherry Hills Country Club fell into a hole. In another instance, while cruising the city, John spotted a smoldering fire under a family's natural gas box. He immediately woke the family, notified the fire department, and because of those efforts, received the Police Commendation Award. Later, John was promoted to the rank of sergeant in 2006, and in 2010 to the rank of senior sergeant. Unfortunately, in 2012, John was seriously injured in an off-duty dirt bike accident, and due to that injury, he was unable to perform the duties of police officer and moved to a civilian position. Today, his heroics are arguably far less dramatic, but nonetheless meaningful. John oversees functions such as code enforcement, records, property and evidence, fleet, technology, policy management, accreditation, and crime analysis, and pretty much anything else that doesn't fit perfectly into another box. John is my right-hand man, and I'm privileged to be his boss and even more honored to be his friend. So in that vein, on behalf of our police department, I present this award to John Reynolds, Support Services Supervisor, from September 6th, 1994 to September 6th, 2024, which is 30 years, recognizing 30 years of dedication, loyalty, and service to the City of Cherry Hills Village Police Department. Council, Mayor, please join me in congratulating John Reynolds for his service.
can still make that certification presentation if you want.
It's the only thing I got prepared, so I'll go grab it. No, thank you, everybody. Thanks, Chief. I talk about being caught off guard. But I'd just like to start by saying, this is such a great city. And, 30 years is a long time. And, it's a great place to work. It truly is. And it's a great place to work because of the people here. And it starts with members of city council, everybody who works here in the city, great leadership. Chief Lyons, thank you for everything you've done for the police department. I've worked for several chiefs here, and I can honestly say Chief Lyons has truly made a difference. So thank you for that. Other than that, Chris, our city manager, thank you for everything you do for the city. And thank everybody else. I mean, it's why we come to work here every day. And everybody comes to work, and they work their butts off, and that's what makes Cherry Hills what it is. So just want to thank everybody for that. And finally, thank my beautiful wife, Deanna. She's put up with me for 30 years and this job. And my mom's sitting right next to her. Hi, Mom. But thank you guys for your support. And thank you for always being there. And throughout, we've had shift work, missed holidays, everything like that. But thank you for always being there and your support. So thank you, everybody.
And thank you. 30 years of service is truly remarkable, and we are so honored.
Sorry. I'm just trying to get out of here.
Photo op. We're so honored to have been the beneficiaries of your service over that long period of time. Thank you. Next is audience participation. And seeing no one, is there anyone who would like to sign up for something that's not the subject of a public hearing on the agenda? Seeing none. Reports from city boards and commissions. I don't see any present. So we'll move on to the consent agenda.
Mayor, I would ask that we remove consent agenda item 7A.
We've removed 7A.
Move to approve the consent agenda excluding 7A.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Moving on to consent agenda item 7A. Councilor Blum.
I was not here for that meeting, so I would recuse myself on that.
All right. Is there a motion?
Move to approve consent agenda item 7A with Councilor Blum's abstention.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor of approving the minutes of the September 3rd meeting?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Abstain.
And one abstention. Thank you. Unfinished business. The first item is public hearing, Council Bill 4, Series 2024, to rezone a parcel of land owned by the Cherry Hills Country Club, legally described as Lot 1 of the Carmel Lane subdivision lot consolidation from R3 to O1 and amending the official zoning map consistent therewith on second and final reading. Okay. Gotta find my, okay. So the first item is to ask if there are any conflicts or other disclosures that council would like to make.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. I'd just like to disclose that I am a member of Cherry Hills Country Club, but I feel like I can make an impartial decision on tonight's hearing.
Is the rest of council comfortable with that? Yeah, thank you. It is 6:39. I will open the public hearing. And I will ask Director Workman to make the presentation. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of City Council. As was just laid out, the next item on your agenda this evening This is a request by the Cherry Hills Country Club to rezone certain property from the current R3 zoning designation to the O1 zoning designation. I would note this is the second and final reading. And also for the record, please note that the applicant has provided the necessary affidavits verifying that all public notification requirements have been met. For those that may not be familiar, the subject property is located just cat-a-corner from here at the northwest corner of Quincy and University. The site's about 3.5 acres in size. It's surrounded by other country club property to the west, single-family residential homes to the north, University with Cherry Hills Elementary to the east, and then city-owned property to the south. Per the applicant's request, they have submitted this rezoning to O1 in order to unify the zoning that addresses all of their property. Currently, this is the only property that the Cherry Hills Country Club owns that's not currently zoned O1. And so this request would allow them to have the same zoning designation applied to all of their property. I won't read this in its entirety, but this rezoning would change the land, comprising of the property from R3 to O1, consistent with the other adjacent club property. There are standards in the municipal code for rezoning property. There are specifically 4 approval criteria found in 16-2-40B. The code does require that only one of those criteria be found, and it is the recommendation of staff and the Planning and Zoning Commission that the applicant has met letter D of these approval criteria. Again, staff won't go through all of this in detail, but certainly we are happy to discuss it at the end of the presentation. In short, rezoning the property from R3 to O1 prevents the property from being developed with homes, which better implements the vision statement by expanding natural open space. That rezoning the property from R3 to O1 is consistent with and expands the existing land use of the adjacent club-owned property. Rezoning the property to the O1 designation increases the amount of property that is zoned for open space uses and decreases the amount of property that is zoned for residential uses. And finally, the rezoning is a request from a private property owner to increase the amount of property zoned for open space. During the course of this application, staff has received one phone call from a village resident. There was no expressed opposition or support of the request, simply for more information. On July 9th of this year, the Planning and Zoning Commission voted unanimously to recommend that City Council approve the rezoning request, again finding that it met the criteria of 16-4-40B1D. The commission did ask some questions about access to the property and certain easements that encumber the property, but they did not express any concerns related to the proposed zone change. At this point, the recommended motion is on the slide before you. That would conclude staff's presentation, but we certainly are available for any questions you all may have.
So before we move on to a motion, are there any questions for Director Workman? Yes, Councilor Eber.
I wanted to follow up a little bit on the question of the easement, even though prior reviewers didn't have any issue with it. I guess I'm trying to understand that there are currently easements there, correct?
That is correct.
And so every entrance in the future would have to make use of that easement? That's the only way we anticipate there will be access?
Yeah, that is currently the only access easement. That's correct.
Okay, so I guess my question to council and staff is that we have our charter amendment that says we're not allowed to give easements of greater than 5 years. And it seems like we have a potential issue on 5 years and a day from now about being able to have access to this property unless there is a vote of the people to further extend an easement.
Well, it's not public open space. It's just, it's
Well, it's
privately
our-
owned
it's our-
open space. No, it's the,
Okay, I guess I should have asked.
Sorry,
Is
it's the
this
country club's
considered part
property.
of the park that is right
No,
there?
it's privately owned property by the country club.
No, not the access over city property to get to what is country club property goes through city park, am I correct?
That's correct, and it's been dedicated by Platt for decades now.
I understand that, but our new charter amendment says that we can't issue licenses or anything for a period of greater than 5 years without a vote of the people. So if this is I
guess
guess
I
I'm
would look
looking
to the
over at
city
Kathy, I
attorney,
see you
but-
picking,
There's no new
There's no new
access
easement.
easement being granted tonight.
but we
Is that what you're
have
saying?
an existing one that will be in place for more than 5 years.
But that's
But it's
been in
existing.
place for a very long time.
Grandfather. Does that mean it's grandfathered?
So are you saying it's grandfathered? Yeah.
I mean, I think all of
You
the,
can't, I mean, your charter amendment says that you have to hold, protect, and maintain in public trust all parks, trails, and open space, and you can't pledge, vacate, grant, or transfer without a majority vote, any property interest, but that's not what's proposed tonight. That
not an
occurred in the
easement.
past.
Well, it's not happening because it exists.
yes.
It exists. So there's no violation of the current charter provision or implication of the current charter provision.
The request tonight is just to rezone the property is all. No land work at all.
I understand, but I'm just trying to understand the implications that if we have a legal opinion that we're not running afoul, then I am satisfied with my question. But I do think that the other thing that comes up is, I just want to confirm that in the application, there's a finding that 01 is consistent, or granting this would be consistent with the master plan of additional open space. And I just want to make sure that 01 does allow construction of buildings on it, i.e. many of our clubs have buildings on what is 01 space. We have it right here in the city center.
Correct.
But if they come to us, and we're not making any permits right now for them to do that, everything is in the future, but to allow any potential development in the future would then require a finding that we are lessening the amount of open space and therefore run against the master plan. And I don't want to bias any potential application, I should say, that just by finding a finding now that keeping it in, while there's no plan now, it is still consistent with furthering the plan, the master plan. Did I fool you?
No, I'm waiting for the question.
Go ahead. Well, I want to make sure that we don't get the club in a situation where, would there be a finding at some point in the future if they came in with a permit application to build something that we have to deny it because it would be contrary to the master plan finding of open space?
Well, we don't know what the master plan would say at that point, first of all, but, because the master plan gets revised every 5 to 10 years, but
Yeah, but I think also the situation is that these are the criteria associated with a rezoning, and they've met the criteria. When they come in for something else, it'll be under different criteria.
That's correct. That's what I was about to say is,
And if that criteria was along the lines that you're talking about, then yeah, there'd be a problem, but if it's not, then it wouldn't apply.
Right, and
So
certain
in the
agreements,
future-
certain agreements may need to be amended if they come in for a building permit to build new facilities on this 3 acres. They would need to come in and get their development agreement or their SIA amended. They'd have to do a site plan. All of it is, I think, covered not only in our staff report, but in the applicant's submittal to us. They even state that they acknowledge that they would have to come in after the fact, after the zoning would be complete if we pass it tonight, if they ever wanted to do anything other than
Absolutely.
the current use, which is temporary uses for tournaments and whatnot.
And
I agree. I just didn't want to set the club up
Yeah, no, that
unfairly
makes sense.
by doing something here that later binds them and takes away a flexibility. I fully understand that everything is subject to law then in place at the time of any application. I just didn't want to line this thing up because I don't see the master plan changing with respect to wanting more open space in the village. And I didn't want to set this up in a way that it unfairly prejudices any future application. If we don't have that situation, I'm fine, but I just wanted to make sure we all understood that.
I don't,
I think that's very interesting, but it's like, we're not setting up anything. So, I mean, I think that's important. It's like, I think your question's very interesting, and it's like going, the applicant has made their presentation based on their presentation, and they live and die by that. I agree. So it's not, we're not doing anything. At least I don't think we are.
And their intention was stated to continue using it the same way they are.
Mayor, it might just help if Director Workman can just really briefly talk about if there were a request for any kind of development, what that process would be. It won't take but 30 seconds.
Please.
I could do it in less than 30 seconds.
There we go.
How about that?
It's just like name that tune.
Yes.
I can do it in 29.
Now you're stretching. No, so the process in the future, should the club decide they want to develop the site, would be to submit a site plan amendment that would likely go through a public hearing process. One of the approval criteria for a site plan amendment is that there is consistency with the master plan. There's other criteria, but that would also have to be demonstrated. So should they decide at some point in the future, 10, 25, 100 years from now, they wanted to do that, they'd have to follow that procedure in place.
Thank you. Other questions for staff? And next, there's an opportunity for the applicant to make a presentation if you'd like. Please come up and state your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, my name is Jake Hedgepeth. I'm the attorney for the Country Club, and 5050 South Syracuse Street is our office. So our overarching goal here is just to make the zoning of the property consistent with the adjacent club land. Rezoning from R3 to O1 not only meets this goal, but directly benefits the city pursuant to the master plan, as we've talked about. And Mr. Workman did a really good job of summarizing all of the important points, but I just wanted to stress a few real quick. So the master plan stresses the importance of the city's pastoral, safe, serene, and open character. Rezoning from R3 to O1 maintains this character by preventing development on the property that would otherwise be allowed to occur. Second, the master plan emphasizes maintaining existing land use patterns in the city on institutional property, including country clubs. Since this land is now owned by the country club, this rezoning expands that existing use of the adjacent club property and makes that use consistent across all club property. And finally, the master plan calls for the preservation of natural features on public and private land. Since no permanent structures are planned to be built on this property, and since it'll be continued to be used in the same way that it has been, that land use will be preserved for the foreseeable future. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant? Seeing none, I did have one question that maybe is actually best for Director Farman. Are there any tax implications of residential zoning versus open space zoning? Is the club a nonprofit organization?
There would probably be some property tax implications. You're right, depending on if it's commercial, non-commercial, if it's a vacant space. There are different classifications there that Arapahoe County uses.
Okay.
Well, may I follow on that question? Isn't an R1 zone that's vacant taxed at vacant land rate of 29% versus, I don't know what Arapahoe County does for an O?
Well, that's why I was asking.
In general, though, they do base it on use, not necessarily on zoning. There are some modifications of that, some details, but in general, that property tax is based on use. So from that perspective.
Does the club pay property taxes?
Agricultural, I mean, yeah, so.
Does the club pay property taxes as it is? Or is it a tax exempt organization? Okay. Well, not an enormous deal. It just occurred to me that.
No, I don't.
It's
I think they
one
pay
property, a
taxes.
potential tax rate change on one property is not going to make an enormous difference, but I was just curious.
I think it's a well-placed question. And we don't know whether the country club is a tax-paying entity or not? Seems like that's a question we should know.
To my knowledge, they are.
They are, okay. To your knowledge, they do pay.
I know they
taxes,
pay
okay.
building permit fees.
Yeah, I know that. Okay. So potentially there's a small tax implication for the city, but, okay. So thank you very much. I will now open the public testimony part of the hearing. Is there anyone signed up who'd like to speak? Or if you haven't signed up yet, if you'd like to speak, you can. Seeing none, at 6:55, I will close the public testimony part of the hearing. And I will now entertain a motion for the council, and then we can discuss and deliberate.
I move to approve Council Bill 4, Series 2024 on second and final reading to rezone Lot 1 of the Carmel Lane subdivision, lot consolidation from R3, paren 1 acre residential close paren to O1, paren open space parks and recreation area district close paren, and amend the official zoning map consistent therewith.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Counselor Eber?
Aye.
Counselor Holen?
Aye.
Counselor Wheel?
Aye.
Counselor Sheldon?
Aye.
Counselor Blum?
Aye.
And I hereby, that passes, and I close the public hearing at 6:56 PM. Thank you very much, and congratulations to the club. The next item of unfinished, or I guess is new business, is Resolution 20, Series 2024, urging a no vote on ballot question 300 at the November 5th election. Clerk Gillespie.
Good evening, Mayor Brown, members of City Council. Staff is presenting for Council's consideration tonight a resolution urging a no vote on a ballot measure for this November's election. Colorado Revised Statute Section 1-45-117 allows City Council to pass a resolution in support or opposition of a ballot measure and limits the reporting and distribution of the resolution to established customary means, which in our case is posting the resolution to the website. So should council approve this resolution tonight, it will be posted to the website as is customary. And staff is happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for staff? Then I would, well, there might be some discussion, but I think the way I'd like to proceed is that we'll start with the motion and then we can,
I actually had.
oh wait, yeah,
I'm sorry, I did have a question for staff.
yes.
We put it on our website. Would there be any other means of advertising this?
No, you personally as residents and electors can,
But the city
the city cannot
further
though.
than posting it.
Right.
Thank you.
I move to approve Resolution 20, Series 2024, urging a no vote on ballot question 300 at the November 5, 2024 election.
Second.
That's been moved and seconded. I know Councilor Eber perhaps wanted to make some comments.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. In looking at the resolution, I thought it was well-written, and I think it is broadly written with great purpose and encompassing the very, very many reasons that I personally have in opposition to this ballot measure, ballot 300. My question is whether or not a little bit more meat on the bone might help the electorate understand a little bit better. And I have drafted 2 whereas provisions that I would like to throw out for consideration by council.
So let's start with one at a time then. So let's read the first one and then we can talk about that and then maybe the second.
What I've gone ahead and done at nobody's request, but I have emailed to both Laura and to you, Mayor, the 2 whereas provisions. I don't know if we want to throw them up on the screen or can at this point, but.
Looks like that's a possibility.
That'd be great.
Yeah. Our trusty clerk can do anything. Exactly.
In 20. And while Clerk Gillespie is looking at that, I just want to make it clear that I have no pride of authorship in any of this, and if anybody has any ideas that you like in general where this is going, but they want to play with wording, I'm happy to yield on any of the wording that I've used. I generally tried to focus in on some of the inconsistencies that I see within the ballot. Right, here you go. Look at that.
All right. Thank you, Clerk.
So let's just start at the first one, if you would. And I guess I'll give people a time to read it rather than, you want me to read it into the record, just so that it's there?
Oh, sure. Wait, and we'll read along while you do that.
So,
Okay.
whereas the council finds that governments at every level use nature trails that allow citizens means to appreciate and enjoy natural resources and environmentally sensitive areas, such that the nature trail allows public enjoyment and educational opportunities consistent with the conservation easement. However, passage of ballot 300 will preclude use of the western parcel in a meaningful manner.
And so what was your thought behind that, if you want to share that?
Sure, what I'm trying to get at is that the ballot measure contains language that basically says it is exclusively for the purpose of natural uses. And the proponents of the measure have made it clear their opposition to the fact that a nature trail was placed on the western portion of the land. And I think it is fully consistent, and the reason we did it was we believe it's fully consistent with the conservation easement terms, and that the ballot measure would preclude use of this trail or even having the trail there because of the fact it is not a natural use. The language of the conservation easement includes the word predominantly and not exclusively, and that falls a little bit into the second one. But the idea there is that it's a specific finding that we think the nature trail is consistent with the conservation easement, and that the ballot measure would preclude use of the western portion in a meaningful manner to include a nature trail.
Are there any thoughts or comments?
Yeah, I got one.
Yes, Councilor Holman.
I like the first three lines. I think that's all very, very true. And all of it is true. Just wondering, and then we go on to just say passage of ballot 300 precludes use of the western parcel in a meaningful manner. I don't know, for some reason makes me a little scratchy, I don't know.
Earl, I think that you're right. It's a little superfluous.
Superfluous, yeah, that word.
If you look at the first word, I think leaving that last part off may be, and using the rest of it, I think would be good.
Yeah, like I said, I like the first three lines a lot.
And if we're going to move forward with this, I would just suggest we make it all tied to the same language we've used in the underlying resolution, and capitalize the term conservation easement.
Yeah.
And
call
ballot
out
question council
300.
should be capitalized city capital council.
Yeah, and ballot question 300.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, they were
Oh, yeah, actually, that part.
inarticulate
No, the
written on
intent,
an
we
airplane.
understand,
Yeah,
we understand the
yeah,
intent though, I like it.
And I'm happy to yield and delete the last line.
Okay,
Mayor,
yes.
I would just say, for the second whereas, if council would like to discuss that, you might want to consider an executive session for legal advice before having that discussion. For the second
Okay.
whereas, please.
Okay,
I guess my question is, I don't want to unnecessarily take us there, but if you all think that there's any merit in the second one, I'll move us into executive session, or again, this is something that was supposed to be with the idea of helping, not causing consternation over legal affairs, and I'd be happy to yield and withdraw it.
okay, so I think we have a couple of options here. One is that if, in reading that, it is something that you would like to pursue, it has been advised that we should propose an executive session. if you read it and feel that it is not necessary or perhaps too legally complicated, then Councilor Eber has offered to withdraw the suggestion. So I guess what my question is there an interest in an executive session?
From my perspective, I think we're okay deleting it, and, you know, I ask myself, how many people are going to read the document itself, and this is fairly subtle, and so I just assume we move on.
Okay, is that, how do other
I
people
think that's
feel?
fine.
Okay, well, so I guess that answers that. So I think we're left with the addition of the first whereas clause then, as we have discussed, with the few proposed amendments. Since there is a motion on the table, I would need a motion to amend and to insert this whereas clause. Do I have, as we discussed?
Madam Mayor, I move to amend the prior motion to add one additional whereas clause that reads, whereas, the council finds that governments at every level use nature trails that allow citizens means to appreciate and enjoy natural resources and environmentally sensitive areas, such that the nature trail allows public enjoyment and educational opportunities consistent with the conservation easement. And I allow that to be modified insignificantly in a manner consistent with the rest of the resolution as it currently exists.
There's a motion for an amendment. Is there a second for the amendment?
Second.
Mayor Pro Tem Wheel, it's been moved and seconded. The question is now on the amendment. All in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Any opposed? So now we have an amended motion on the table. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Where did I put my agenda? Here we go. Next is Resolution 21, Series 2024, approving an amendment to the subdivision improvement agreement for George W. Calkins Trust subdivision. Director Workman.
Good evening once again, Madam Mayor and members of council. The next item on your agenda, as was just alluded to, is a proposed subdivision improvement agreement to the George W. Calkins subdivision, Resolution 21, Series 2024. I would like to note that the applicant is also in the audience this evening. For context for council, the subject property of this request is located at the southeast corner of Quincy Avenue in Dahlia. It is just under 18 acres in size and is comprised of 7 individually zoned lots that are zoned R1. For background for council, in April of 2015, the council at that time approved the George W. Calkins Trust final plat. Per the code, the owner was required to enter into a subdivision improvement agreement, which among other things established a timeline for certain approvals. Specifically, Section 1-C of that agreement states that the developer shall submit and obtain the city's approval of the construction plans and engineer's cost estimate of improvements no later than April 7th of 2025, otherwise known as the approval deadline. Earlier this year, staff was contacted by the owner requesting an extension of 10 years to those approval requirements. Again, specifically, the developer hereby requests the city agree to amend the SIA to extend the approval deadline from April 7th, 2025 to April 7th, 2035. So staff analysis for council's benefit. This is a proposed change to the subdivision improvement agreement, which is a contract amendment. There's no approval criteria for a contract amendment for council to consider. However, should council decide not to amend the contract, the council may proceed with vacating the final plat, but is not required to do so. Should council decide to amend the contract, the deadline for approval would be extended to April 7th, 2035, with the existing protections, specifically the requirement that the applicant get approvals prior to construction, would still remain in place. Maybe. There we go. In terms of commission action and recommendation, there is none. Again, this is a contract amendment that does not change any property lines, easements, obligations related to parks, trails, or open space, or any other issue. The decision to amend the SAA is the purview of City Council. Based on the fact that the protections would remain in place, the recommended motion for council this evening is to approve the resolution extending the deadline for approvals to April 7th, 2035. That would conclude staff's presentation, but certainly we're available for any questions you may have. And again, the applicant is in the audience this evening.
Thank you. Is there anyone on council who has a conflict or any other concern disclosures that you'd like to make? Seeing
Mayor,
none, oh, yes.
I just want to note that when this came before Parks, Trails, and Rec, I was a member, and I believe I may have been the chair at the time.
Okay,
But
thank
I
you.
don't believe that poses any conflict.
In the matter of disclosure, I was the chair of planning and zoning when this came up, and we worked very well with the developer. Speak very highly of him. So this was something that was negotiated, and the developer worked very well with the city and planning and zoning to get this thing approved back 10 years ago.
Thank you. And I would disclose that I was on council when this was approved. So I will open the public hearing at 7:11 p.m. We've already done the overview of the application.
We do have.
Madam Mayor, just a point of clarification.
Yes, and we did the presentation a little bit.
But it's not a public hearing.
Oh, it's not?
No.
I thought it was. Oh, because it's a contract. Sorry, there's no public hearing.
It's okay. More process is
Yeah, so
generally not
questions for
hurtful.
staff. So I don't know. Anytime these kinds of things come up, my brain automatically goes to public hearing, but you're right. Okay. So yes, questions for staff.
Yeah, and by the way, yeah, it's been approved. I was on council as well, just for disclosure, I think, when it got approved. My question is, so as I understand it, though, that if it wasn't extended and council didn't take any action, it just continues on like it was.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
But council could go back then at that point in time. Whereas if we change it, then council doesn't have any ability to do anything for another 10 years.
Without negotiating new terms with
Right,
the
without
applicant, that's
negotiating
correct.
terms. So one of my questions is, has this been done before?
I
believe this was extended once already. No?
No.
I don't think so.
I thought I was here when it.
No, we were part of the subdivision process, so
No,
And-
not to my knowledge, and we've been around this.
I was going to say, not to my knowledge, in the research that I've been able to do. No, not to my knowledge.
Right,
I
so,
mean, certainly not for this project. I don't know if it's ever been done for any other.
And
The
there's-
applicant is in the audience shaking his head, no, it hasn't been done as well.
I think so. So it's a case of first impression for
And these
us.
types of things are few and far between in this.
Exactly. And so the biggest issue that I have is that with regard to precedent issues. So in this case, like it, blah, 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 it sounds like, we want to just continue on, but there could be a situation where another applicant in the future comes along, has the same situation, and in fact, we don't want to do it. Any issues at all?
It's a discretionary contractual decision here, and I'm not even aware of the actual likelihood of something similar coming down the road in the future.
Certainly not anytime soon.
Yeah.
But again, the decision to amend a contract is a discretionary decision by council.
Okay, just wanted, again, because,
I'm not aware of any legal complications
okay,
that would
good.
arise.
Because
as a result.
certainly in this day and age, sitting back and going up, unlikely to happen. I think we all know in this day and age in our country and in our state, there ain't anything that's
Fair
unlikely
point.
to happen.
One never knows.
One never knows. So, okay, because that's my main concern is that we put ourselves in a situation where we don't, we're squeezed, but you're saying that we don't, so that's good then. Good, thank you.
Same idea, but maybe a little different twist is if we choose not to extend this contract, then all of the documents are vacated at that point. Am I correct or no? At that
No.
point, the contract is lapsed, but
Not even the contract has lapsed. It would just give a future
it lapses
council.
at the end of 2024.
No.
No, the contract would not lapse. The deadline for approvals would not have been met, which would give council an ability to vacate the plat should they so.
That's, in essence, you're getting, you made it two
Well, it would be a
steps.
yeah, it's a separate step, and we're
At any
not
rate-
contemplating a step of vacating the plat at this time.
So the plat does not get vacated without active effort or
A whole separate
movement by
process.
us.
That's right.
Yes.
If we ever did such a thing, does that allow this property owner to come back in at that point, under whatever law applies at that point, and seek a more dense project?
Unlikely, because the zoning would remain the same. And so the minimum lot size of 2.5 acres would have to be maintained, in which case these lots are generally that size. So you're unlikely to get any additional density.
Okay. My second comment is whenever I am asking or being asked to extend a contract, I guess my question is sort of what's in it for us? And I would like to consider whether or not there's any way that our developer would be willing to move forward on the pocket park in the interim of doing something like this. And I don't know whether or not, it's obviously an amendment to the contract, but we're already amending the contract right now, that I would sure love to see our pocket park get installed in the trail.
Well, that was my question, was that I know the subdivision included land dedication to the public, and it's been a long time. I believe that didn't actually happen until the lots were developed. So that public land has been platted, but it isn't public right now.
Correct. And that's the way I understand it. And staff talked about this. And because during the construction process, a lot of easements go across these, whether they're water, sewer, drainage, and we'd rather not have all of this built and then have it all torn up again as these improvements are put in, even if it was already public.
So one thing, when it says it doesn't change any easements, et cetera, it doesn't change the platting of the publicly allocated land, but it does push any potential possible use of that land further out.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing.
Potentially, I mean, it could, right?
Right, I mean,
They
the
could break down
applicant could
tomorrow,
come in
right?
and, seek his building permits next week, even if we granted a 10-year extension right now.
Right.
I would point out one thing that I think we've all thought about. I don't know if it's all coming to your minds tonight, but I know living on the east side of the city, driving west down Quincy all the time, and I hear this from all of my neighbors all the time. They ask me what's going on with that property, and I tell them it's privately owned and it's zoned for 7 lots, and they may or may not break ground this year or decade or whenever it may be. My neighbors, including my own wife and kids and myself, we're all thrilled that they haven't broke ground.
I agree.
Because it keeps that open vista of a view coming down Quincy. And I would personally not be in favor of adding any conditions right now that would potentially put that applicant in a spot where they had to either accept those conditions, go build infrastructure they didn't want to build at a time when they don't have any revenue to pay for those improvements, the revenue presumably being from lot sales, or say no to the condition, at which point we turn this down and the city could then revoke their plat, unwind their plat at any time after April 7th of next year. Yeah. I don't think that's a wise path for this council to go down whatsoever.
Well, and just to respond to that, I think what I was not asking for a pocket park fully developed, and I was asking that the space be, even if it was a natural space, become potentially recognized as a park with a trail access, but if it hasn't been legally dedicated to the public domain yet, you know, that's another ask that we are asking of this developer. And, you know, I don't know, I too like the vista across. I do know that one of the things that was approved by council and required by the Parks and Trails Commission was that vegetation always be capped at a certain height, that the fences on the north edge be only of a certain height and openness, so that we don't end up with a shadow effect on the trail and icing on the trail, and allow people to kind of have a better ability to continue to have that vista. But you are right that any development in there, I don't want to rush for the obvious impacts that I was able to enjoy it as a kid, and I hope my kids get to enjoy it as open space too. So I just put it out there from consideration.
And I would just want to clarify that I was just making the point that make sure everyone knew that we don't have public access to that public land yet. I'm not proposing any change. Mayor Pro Tem Wheel.
Thank you, Mayor. I have to say, I'm kind of confused. When I read through this, it's like there's a contract, the contract's expiring in, you know, early in the next year, and we're supposed, and we're being requested to renew it. The renewal of it doesn't have a whole lot of impact, it sounds like. So that kind of begs the question of why. And I also, when I read through, I'm reading words like, for various reasons it wasn't developed, not exactly forthcoming. What would prevent council 10 years from now having this same conversation? I'm not sure what we're doing, is my point. It seems like we're doing something that's sort of perfunctory. It kind of binds the city when we don't really need to be bound. It's not clear why it hasn't been developed. It's not clear whether it's going to be developed. I mean, so I'm having a lot of trouble with the why.
And then adding on to that, because one of the things that you sit back and you go, okay, yeah, and everything you said is absolutely right, but why wouldn't it just be extended for 2 years, 3 years? See where you are at that point in time. Why is it just 10 years?
The assumption from staff and is indicated by the applicant is that the original deadline was 10 years out, and so the applicant has requested an additional 10 years.
Yeah, that's not a reason.
Listen,
Counselor.
if he, I think if the applicant came in and asked for 20 years or 50 years, I'd sign it up in a heartbeat. I'm not sure what the opposition is, other than maybe a little uncertainty about the applicant's motives, which I don't think is our business.
Counselor
Let
Blum.
me build a little bit on what Dan said, because I was chair of the planning and zoning when this came through, and the developer was so committed to keeping the view corridor, like you say, driving down there. They committed to a lot of things in the application as a negotiation with the city, and they were very bent over backwards to allow that, because that's very critical driving down Quincy, as you say. And I don't have any problem approving it for another 10 years. Like you said, if they don't develop for 10 years, so be it. Meantime, you've got, but if they do develop, it was subject to a lot of negotiations with planning and zoning and the staff at that time, and all these things were addressed. So I have no problem extending it for 10 years, like Dan said, 20 years if we had to.
Well, and I certainly don't speak for the applicant. If I put myself in this position, in the position of the applicant, and I hear your question about why. It was the first thing that came to my mind when I read it as well. If I, as an applicant, don't have certainty that I'll be able to develop this property at some point in the future, then that motivates me to do it now. And I think we all are in agreement that, I remember actually when city council considered this, I remembered saying that I was sad to see the property, I would be sad to see it developed, but I certainly understand and respect the rights of private property owners. And so I think that if by approving this extension, it allows the applicant the opportunity to leave the land in its current state for a longer period of time, I think that is to the benefit of the city and the residents of Cherry Hills Village personally.
Well, and it is, but, you know, and again, listening to that, and again, that's been my life, has been a negotiator and a trader. And I'm listening to this and I'd go, great, I'll grant you 10 years, and you can't do anything for a minimum of 5. So I'll guarantee that nothing will happen to that property in 5 years. I mean,
What you're saying.
I'm listening to this and I'm going,
Consideration.
right, absolutely. No, that was my natural reaction. And then if I'm the developer, I'm probably gonna go, well, I'm not doing that. I mean, I don't know if they do it or not, but.
Does this contract exist between, sorry to jump in, but does this exist between the developer and the city, or is it something that rides with the property, and if the property were sold, it would be enforced with the next owner?
Yeah, it's with the property. Once it's been platted, right?
Well, but this is a contract that's sort of.
Oh,
like
that's true.
Not part of the planning.
Subdivision.
Well, and I guess the question that I have that's in parallel with that is that if a contract lapses and the zoning stays in place, the developer, it sounds to me like the developer could come back in and seek exactly the same contract at a future date. Now, it sounds to me like all this contract is an agreement to try and get approved documents by a certain date. So I don't really understand why that's something we can't renegotiate later. I mean, I guess, like Randy said, what are we doing here? But what's the real downside of letting this thing lapse?
Well,
Other than
so
what Dan
here,
said.
here's one important note. In the deadline for approval, assuming that some city council moved forward with vacating the final plat due to failure to meet that deadline. This is at the bottom of page 2. Vacation of the final plat shall cause lot lines to be vacated, but shall not affect or vacate easements publicly dedicated to the city or other easement beneficiaries unless the city or such easement beneficiaries consent in writing to the vacation. So, I'm not advocating one way or another, but if the city were to vacate this plat, we'd start over and we'd keep the public land that was dedicated to the public.
Which is nothing right now.
It's a small amount, but it was the amount that was required by the.
No, but that hasn't been dedicated right now, is what I thought I just heard.
Does it count?
It's been
hasn't been
dedicated as public
dedicated.
land, but it hasn't been improved, no construction documents, there's no
We don't
nothing.
own it yet, is what I thought I heard. It hadn't been dedicated and accepted.
That's what happens on the plat.
Yeah. So it has
And
been.
I thought I heard Jay say that.
Well, we're not accessing it. It's not a public park yet.
Okay, but we own it.
Well,
Well,
yeah,
it's
it's
been
not a public
dedicated,
park,
and there's
but
an easement.
It's an easement that's been
Yeah.
publicly dedicated.
Okay,
So
so
then-
that's a little
Yes.
different than what I thought I heard over here. But then, if it lapses, yeah, we keep the area that is dedicated to the park. I don't know that that's necessarily fair, but regardless, I guess the point is the applicant comes back in and says, I want to put the lot lines back where they were, and there's no question in my mind that a council would probably say yes, but
So can I, from a staff perspective, one of the
values, I guess that's not the right word. One of the evaluation standards, right, is this obviously predates me, but it was clear going back through the records that there was a lot of work that was done between the applicant and the city and the boards and commissions. To Councilor Blum's point, the current owner / developer was really willing to work with the city. Should the existing plat lapse and council decide to vacate it, there's no guarantee that the current owner and developer will remain the next owner and developer that will be as good to deal with, as willing to make concessions to the city's benefit for things like landscaping and view corridors and things of that nature. Again, it's something for council to consider. Ultimately, it's your decision, but some of those benefits would have to be renegotiated potentially with an applicant that's not as willing to do that.
And I'm going to put my developer hat on because it happens to be what I do during my day job. If I'm the applicant right now and council decides not to extend this for whatever reason, I'm staring down the barrel of expiring vested rights. My entitlements are going to expire. And not vested rights, but my plat is essentially at risk. Yes. And we developers work very hard to get our plats approved. That is usually the big trigger for us to be able to go do something with the property, which for whatever reason this developer has not, which I, again, don't think is any of our business as to why. But what I would do if I were in these shoes right now, being the applicant, and the city council turned down this extension, I very well may go pull the proverbial trigger, get my cost estimates in, get my surety posted, and go break ground. Now, for some of you, that may sound like a neat thing to have those houses there on that property. I, for one, and I think most of our residents would be vehemently opposed to our findings if this council should choose to do that, to force the developer into that position to where they have no choice but to lose their plat or build. And if they have to go build it right now, and you have to go tell your neighbors, your constituents, as why they had to go build that thing now as opposed to waiting for 5 years or 10 years or 20 years, I don't want to have to explain that to my neighbors. Because I think every one of our residents love that ground as it is today. And I think we should be blessed thanking the developer that he hasn't broken ground. I think there's no discussion here. I know it seems odd from a council standpoint to sit here and question, why would we do this? Why wouldn't we do this without asking for something, getting something in return? Pocket Park built now, 5 years of no build in order to give them a 10-year window to build. We can't do that. That is not the right answer right now. The right answer is if we are such strong advocates of open space, in this case it happens to be privately owned but acting as open space. It is. People aren't recreating on it, I get that. They'd be trespassing if they were. But why on earth would we put the proverbial gun to someone's head and say, you got to go build it now or else you lose your plat? To me, this conversation has really gotten silly. I think we need to thank the applicant for the opportunity. This is an opportunity for this city and for our residents. We need to be thanking him for coming in and offering up another 10 years, not questioning whether or not we should approve it or not.
Okay, you can take your developer hat off now.
You can take your developer
Hat off. And your point is, when you sat back and said, and again, I was just saying as an example, because that's how my mind works.
I get it.
That's just what I do. And you said, that's not the right answer. And I'm going, yeah, and it's not the right answer if in fact, and again, it could be a gun, if in fact, the view is, and the view of council is going, yeah, that's exactly what's going to happen. Ground is going to break between now and April of 2025. And you're absolutely right. If that's what we think will happen, then that's not the right decision. And if it's unlikely to happen or it wouldn't happen, then we missed an opportunity.
What opportunity did we miss?
Something, I mean, I'm just.
To negotiate something?
Yeah.
Now, let me say this, because it was negotiated, as Paul said, up front. And we spent, I think we probably had 3 or 4 planning and zoning meetings, and I don't know what happened at city council after that. But Dan, you hit the nail on the head. I think if we have an opportunity here, and I wear a developer hat, but I'm not even going to wear it right now. I think we go ahead and approve this for 10 years. And I agree with you 100%. You got to go tell your constituents, all of a sudden now they're going to have 8,000 square foot houses blocking the view corridor. So I'm 100% in agreement with Dan that we approve this and we do it right away.
Okay, so here's what I am hearing. I thank the applicant for being here, but I definitely don't think that trying to negotiate with an applicant, at a podium, et cetera. So if there is, I think what I would like to do is entertain this motion. If this motion does not pass, then I would recommend that we have other meetings with the developer to see some other, if there's another course of action. Does that sound reasonable?
No.
Can we go ahead and make the motion then?
Please make the motion.
I move to approve Resolution 21, Series 2024, approving the First Amendment to the Subdivision Improvement Agreement for the George W. Calkins Trust Subdivision and restriction on lot conveyance.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. And this is just a voice vote, right? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Was that any opposed? Okay.
And let me just say for the record that the comments that I made were in direct result of the comments that you two guys were making. I didn't have that in my mind until you guys started to talk. And then you did, I'm going, well, I'm not going to let that go by. So
That's what we love about you, Earl, the constant negotiator. If I ever have to negotiate anything, I want Earl. I want Earl on my team.
So that passed
So
unanimously.
congratulations and thank you, and sincerely, for whatever reasons, thank you for not breaking ground. I have continued to enjoy that driving past there every day for the last 10 years, and hopefully we'll continue to do it for 10 more. Moving on, Resolution 22, Series 2024, approving a software as a service agreement with Tyler Technologies, Inc. for municipal court software.
Good evening,
Director.
Mayor and Council. This council item tonight is an infrequent request from city staff. It is a non-budgeted transaction over $10,000 that requires council approval per the city's purchasing policy. As you received the 2025 proposed budget this evening, it reminded me that staff and council have a lot of detailed discussions on the budget, and council is diligent in understanding the budget to appropriately monitor the budget and financial statements. Because of this thorough preparedness, unbudgeted requests seldom occur and usually are in consideration of extraordinary circumstances. Also, because this resolution is related to council's September 3rd discussion updating the city's purchasing policy, staff wanted to provide additional context with the presentation of the information rather than simply placing it on council's consent agenda. We are still working to revise the draft policy based on council's previous discussion, yet tonight is a good example of the updated policy's non-emergency unanticipated expenditure. Just stepping back, the idea to replace the city's court system was generated by our municipal court clerk, Ariana. She is constantly looking for ways to make process improvements. And once Ariana learned the current court system, she identified areas where it lacked efficiency and adequate technology. She began wondering if there were other software options that could enhance efficiency while also update the technology to the overall court process. By polling other courts in our network, we determined 3 software systems are prominently used by other courts, and we reviewed demonstrations from those software providers. There are several major factors weighing in favor of Tyler Technologies. They have the ability to interface with Brazos, which is the city's police citation provider, and it's also a Tyler company. Along with Tyler's ability to interface with the Department of Motor Vehicles and their records, so drivers' points can be automatically added, and the current accident records can be reviewed in a live court session, vastly improving the judge's ability to make decisions in the courtroom. Lastly, another benefit to using Tyler is that it hosts a payment system directly interfacing with their court record system. And the city has experienced recent problems with using two separate systems for those payments and citations, and moving to a single software provider would reduce errors and system downtime. Tyler also has paperless capability and improved court record maintenance, which the current system the city uses lacks. And in addition to the upgraded attributes of this product, we can take advantage of a 3-year pricing opportunity without increase of annual maintenance fees. This means we can purchase the product now, increase effectiveness and efficiency within the court system, and approximately 40% of Ariana's time can be repurposed to focus on other city functions. Ariana can increase support for the city clerk, sales tax, accounts payable, and special event permits. The total contract cost for this 3-year contract is $96,000. The 2024 estimate is an implementation cost of $10,000. The overall implementation costs are $30,380, which would be split between the fourth quarter this year and early in 2025. There is a small hardware cost of $525 and prorated maintenance of $3,446 in 2024. And you can see the 3 years would be fixed pricing after that, $13,883. Tyler would take over the payment processing, which is already budgeted at $5,000 a year. So the total unbudgeted cost for this year is $13,971. This slide shows the funding sources, which are already appropriated in 2024. The implementation costs would be spent out of the capital fund. There are $10,000 of unspent server replacement budget costs this year, which would be utilized for those costs. And then in the general fund administration department, we would have the remaining unspent appropriations, $525 for equipment maintenance, $3,446 for the unspent and unanticipated contracts, which we have in the other contracts line item. So in referencing back to that 2024 draft purchasing policy, the information on this slide would be provided to the approver of the purchase, which would be the city manager or city council. And the department head must have unspent appropriations in their department budget for the operating costs. And if the purchase was related to capital, in the capital fund, the purchase must be similar in nature. So in this example, the computer software would be purchased utilizing unspent computer equipment budget appropriations, and then the software purchase could not utilize anything else, such as police equipment or vehicle appropriations. That concludes my presentation. I can answer any questions council may have.
And before council does that, I just want to extend the staff presentation just for 2 seconds. I asked Doug to do this. Again, as he mentioned at the first part of this, normally this would be on consent. And I asked him to pull this off and let's make it new business. There were a lot of questions in the purchasing policy conversation that we had on a couple different levels. There was a discussion about what is an unanticipated non-emergency expenditure? Like how could it's almost like a wondering what would even fall in that category. We thought this would be a great example of what that might be. There's also a lot of good questions about, well, what are we not spending, and do we really, do we need to get involved in that decision about what we're not spending it on? And we thought this was another great example of the kind of budget administration, if you will, that goes on with these kind of expenditures. And so it really is, I don't want you to think that we're going to get into the weeds like this from here on out on everything. I just thought it was a great test case, if you will, to help council understand what this category of expenditure is that generated so much conversation last time.
Councillor Holland.
Couple of questions. One is, and since we're on that, and again, and this is because of what's in the charter, right? Why you're going through all of this? Why are you looking at me that way? The answer should be yes.
Purchasing policy, or is it the charter?
No, it's not. It's not. I thought this whole thing with, you got to find the unanticipated, you got to find it from this and that, and go through all this rigmarole.
Appropriations?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
Well, the purchasing policy is adopted by resolution. I think
yeah, I know
the
that.
contract delegation, you're right, had some charter implications. But the purchasing policy would
Okay,
be just an update adopted by council.
Yeah, no, yeah, I understand that. Okay, but I thought there was, I mean, this whole notion of we're coming for a supplemental appropriation, and we've got to find another spot where it exists elsewhere in the budget. That's already been appropriated.
Right, the appropriations are already in place, so it's basically repurposing.
Right. And the reason we're doing that is because,
I think it's
Is
because of the
because-
purchasing policy.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, what was that?
That was what we were
what was
discussing
the-
last
what
meeting,
was the-
remember?
What was, and this is fine, but I mean, just, it helps me, and I'm an old guy, so I forget. There was something associated with, that was screwy because something was in the
was.
charter. What was that?
If you're talking about during the discussion on the purchasing policy, reference the charter, because there was some concern about delegation of signature authority.
I think it was the budget. I think it has to
Or
do with
something
the
in
budget.
Article 9 of the charter.
And like, we can't have, it might
Okay,
be
well, then-
supplemental, like, we can't have supplemental unless the revenues are
Yeah, yeah.
more
exactly,
than
right.
anticipated or something like that.
Okay,
That's
I think that's exactly right, Katie. That's exactly right.
I think that, yeah.
So, yeah, I just got confused. So this is more the purchasing policy than it is.
Yeah, the appropriations.
We don't have to go through that whole
We wouldn't
rigmarole.
be asking
Okay,
council for
good.
And
additional
remember the
appropriations.
conversation we had 2 weeks ago when we were all getting a little confused about, does it have to be allocated by department? Does it have to be
Yeah, yeah,
allocated by
no, that-
line
yeah.
item, by, and that, so I think.
Exactly, and that's why we're trying to clarify that.
Right. No, I got that. You don't need to repeat that again.
Okay.
I know that. What I didn't know is what that, and I thought it was this piece where you're looking where to get it, but it is, I think that's exactly what it is there has to be revenues.
Correct.
Yes, it's
Whatever
Article
that
9, Section 9.10 of the charter, so the council can make additional appropriations during the fiscal year for unanticipated expenditures, but such additional appropriations shall not exceed the amount by which actual and anticipated revenues of the year are exceeding the revenues as estimated in the budget.
Right.
Unless-
Supplemental
unless
appropriations.
emergency.
And that's not what we're doing here.
correct.
Okay.
So the purchasing policy is really talking about where are those levels? Where should they be?
No, I got
So
that.
therefore, tonight, if we did, no, but this is important. If we did change the purchasing policy as proposed by staff, you would not hear this.
Right.
This would all be carried out and at this level of detail, but instead of you sort of reviewing it, it would be me at my level.
Nope, I got
And
that.
reporting back to
I
council.
got that.
And then you'd receive the report after the fact.
And I'm not done yet.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Okay. The other question I have is, and I think, because I don't have a lot of experience with SaaS contracts, and I think that's what this is. It's like, SaaS contracts are like.
Yes, it is.
Razor blade contracts. Hey, we'll give you the razor, but you got to keep buying the blades from us. And maintenance, $13,000 a year is really not maintenance. That's really just the renewal fee. Because I was going to ask, what are they really doing? It's nothing. That's just the way these SaaS contracts work, right?
Well, we will be getting support, obviously, if something goes wrong, but then there
Right.
will be enhancements throughout the year that they do. That's not a major upgrade, but software enhancements. And this is also a cloud software product, so they provide the server, they provide the security. So that's something the city will not have to do. We won't have to worry about our server and upgrading the server for this court software. So that's one
Okay.
positive.
Yep, good. Okay, thanks. That's just, I just wanted to make
But
sure.
you're right, it's not an on-premise solution, it is a cloud software solution.
Mayor Pro Tem Wheel.
Thank you, Mayor. A quick question on what we do today. There were charges that seemed, material, that on the revenue that they're collecting for tickets and that sort of stuff. Do we pay a fee to somebody today? I don't have it in front of me, but it was something like 4%? or
Yes,
so
we
of the-
do. We pay the citation provider, which is another Tyler product, and it's Brazos.
Okay, so
And-
that's not a change, material change from what we're doing today.
No, it's not. We're going to continue with Brazos, but it's actually going to be a better interface because right now we don't have a good interface between our financial system and Brazos. So since they're both Tyler products, that's going to be a lot more efficient. It's going to be a seamless interface. Right now, we have to manually input all those citations into the court software system. So that's where Ariana is going to be saving a lot of time.
I got the part.
And hopefully helping with errors so that we
Yeah.
don't have errors.
Now, I got the part about much
Exactly.
better interface. I was just concerned about, is there an incremental cost for the revenue that they're collecting that we're not experiencing today?
No change in the revenues, no.
Okay.
Other questions? Counselor Ebert?
I especially like the note in there that said Ariana has just become 40% more efficient for the same price. But I think our taxpayers would love to see, that type of efficiency that we're asking and then we're able to implement. I guess the question, and I assume the analysis looked at what a 0.4 FTE is worth when you include salaries and benefits, and the cost of this is way less than what that 0.4 FTE is. So that we, in essence, are winning twice, I guess I'd say.
That's a very good point. I mean, we have a very slim staff in the administration department, and this provides a lot of cross-training, coverage, a lot more time for Ariana to understand. Like she's learned a lot in the community development, public works areas, so that allows her to provide additional coverage area, so we don't have to hire additional staff to be that backup cover person. So that frees her up, like accounts payable. I'm the primary person, but now Ariana can back me up and be that accounts payable, back me up in the sales tax areas where we really don't have a backup person right now. That allows, she could possibly take over some of the things that Laura does, because Laura's basically just been assuming more and more duties, especially with the crier, the website, and those type of things. So it provides a lot more flexibility for our staffing.
And that's great, and I assume it's just absolutely a clear gain in terms of a 0.4 FTE is a lot more would cost a lot more than what this software is gonna cost.
Yes, yes.
I just would offer to council that there is additional calculus on top of that, though, and I mentioned a second ago, the opportunity for ensuring that we reduce the liability associated with errors, people's driving records, insurance, everything else. That liability, we've been manually inputting, if you stop and really think about it, it'll make you a little anxious, or at least it makes me a little anxious. So I certainly appreciate the opportunity to greatly reduce that liability.
That's why we're not anxious, because you're anxious.
Yeah, exactly. It's your job to be anxious for us.
Thank you for your anxiety on our behalf.
Okay. Yeah, Counselor Sheldon.
I don't have a question, I just have a comment. I'm only familiar with Tyler Technologies from a community development standpoint, and that is that a lot of the jurisdictions that I work in have Tyler Technologies doing all their GIS mapping. And so you go to the town of Castle Rock and you pull up their mapping, and it'll give you zoning lookup, and it'll give you all the property owner information and all these things, and it links itself, the technology. And I just say this because if we ever wanted to really expand Cherry Hills Village's capabilities in the community development, public works realm, I think all this same technology talks to each other. If it's all done with the same carrier, Tyler, I think you could end up finding your way, navigating your way through lots of different platforms that are talking to each other because they're all done together. Like you can go in and get to your property tax statements, and you can get to your court violations and all this stuff, whether it's at the city level or at the user level. So I actually really like this company. I've seen them a bunch, and I don't know them from this side of the ledger, so to speak, from the finance or court citation system, but I think it's a good pick. I'm thrilled that you picked them.
That's great. No, I appreciate that. They only work with governments, and we did implement the financial software piece at Centennial. So they have a very good track record and great products.
All right. Well, I would, if there's no further comments, I would entertain the motion.
I move to approve Resolution 22, Series 2024, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Cherry Hills Village approving a software as a service agreement with Tyler Technologies, Inc. for municipal court software.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And then that passes unanimously, and I would just add for everyone now to not discuss now, but contemplate in your mind as we revisit our purchasing policy, whether this is something that you appreciated discussing as council, whether it is something that you would have preferred staff handle, because this is a great example and might help us craft where that line needs to be. Moving on to reports. I guess first, as we were talking about staff and efficiency and all that they're doing, and in particular freeing up 40% of Ariana's time, that comes a little late because the CML event, the City of Cherry Hills Village hosted the CML event last week, and I volunteered Cherry Hills Village to host that about a year before at one of the CML meetings, really not having much idea of what that involved. And basically, I volunteered our staff, and in particular, Ariana and Laura Gillespie. I know Catherine Ducharme chipped in, Chris Kramer, Doug Farman were all there. But Ariana organized everything. The catering, the food, and then unfortunately, I'm so sorry for your loss, but was not even able to attend the event after all of that work. And I just wanted all of you to know how much I appreciate it, personally appreciate it. The city appreciates it. It made such an amazing impression on everyone who was there. It was not at all, I think, what they were expecting. I don't know what they were expecting. Many people had never been to Cherry Hills Village before, but that wasn't it. And it was in such a positive way. But personally, I acknowledge that I volunteered you all for a lot of additional work. And so I just want you to know that I appreciate it. So thank you. I also, if anybody's watching, want to give a huge token of gratitude to the Arapahoe County Mounted Patrol, and not just Arapahoe County, but they brought in Jefferson County, Parker, Denver sheriffs. They had 20 officers there. 10 had 2 legs and 10 had 4 legs. And it was an amazing demonstration. All of the attendees were just thrilled. Videoing it, they got to meet all the horses. It was, I think even Kevin Bomber said he never experienced anything like it in all of his years with CML. It was a great demonstration of how that resource can be used in communities for community policing, for crowd control, and I think it gave a lot of people in attendance ideas at different ways they might approach things. Particularly the mayor of Sheridan felt like that type of resource could be really effective in building a relationship between the community and law enforcement in her community. So thank you to them for coming. That was another one where as they pulled up in all of their trailers and unloaded all of their horses and put all their saddles on and brushed them, and the whole demonstration was maybe 15 minutes. It took them hours to load their horses, to get them all over there, to set up. They practiced all day. And I just realized at the time that it had been a big ask, bigger than perhaps I had envisioned. And so I'm grateful for that. The barn party was this past weekend. It was a wonderful event. It was beautiful at the Village Club. And thank you to the Village Club for hosting it, but I will confess I'll be excited when we're able to have it at our newly renovated Quincy Farm space. That makes it just extra special. And then it may be too late to purchase tickets at this point, but Dine for the High Line is this weekend. I am out of town and unable to attend, but I hope that some of you are planning on attending that. And I will leave my mayor's report at that, and we'll start at this end with Councilor Ebert.
Thank you, Mayor. I too wanted to thank you all for all of the volunteering you did at the CML meeting. I think, like the mayor said, they were stunned that our director of finance would be out there moving food out, and director, that our city clerk was willing to stay late and do all the work that everybody did. So thank you all to everybody who was involved with that. I have no other report other than to say that we continue in my neighborhood to have a lot of people asking about speed on Mansfield and the through street of Parkway. So other than that, I'll talk with Chief on that.
All right, Councilor Holen.
Well, picking up on it, I too like to thank Ariana and Laura in particular, but everybody's staff for the CML thing. It was really, really great. And between having it at the Village Club and people seeing what that was, and then the mayor's comments, which were really, really good, it really struck me that people don't really know what goes on in Cherry Hills. And I just kept thinking to myself as I'm listening and talking to those other people from other cities, and I'm going, how many of our legislators that are making rules about a city that they know nothing about, and how impactful those rules, those changes, those ordinances, those statutes are? And I think we really need to do something about getting them here to do that. There's no question in my mind about that, because I was almost shocked at how stunned those people were, and then also to the mayor's comments about the history of Cherry Hills and kind of how that all played into it. And so it really, like I say, my libertarian notion was really raging over in terms of going, I can't believe people are just making laws that affect communities that they know absolutely nothing about. And to me, it's an abomination. Other than that, I have no report.
Mayor Pro Tem Wheel.
No report.
Councilor Sheldon.
Just a reminder, I was supposed to be out at a work function tonight. It got postponed for 2 weeks. I am out on our next meeting on Tuesday, October 1st. That's it.
Councilor Plum.
I am also out on October 1st. Is the car show, is that this weekend?
That is this weekend, yes.
What are the hours of that?
9 to 1?
9 to
Yes,
1,
to benefit the Cherry Hills Village Police Foundation. I'm sure it's going to be 10 to 1? 10 to 1? Maybe 9's when the cars show up. Maybe you have to be here at 9. The public should show up at 10.
Is my doctor's band still going to be there? Yeah, they will.
Yeah, they're great.
And by the way, speaking of, I was up in Vail at Oktoberfest over the weekend and ran into former Councilman Griffin, and who was attending the Vail car show, and he was excited. He said, ours is going to be better. So just passing it on.
Well, good. Normally that event is always, last minute, week before they've got nothing, and then all of a sudden hundreds of people. So it sounds like maybe it was a little earlier participation this time. City Manager.
Yeah, I appreciate the comments, and I'm sure staff appreciates the comments about the CML event. I do want to say I've attended many similar events like that over decades, and I don't think I've ever seen city council members kick in like I did that night. I would offer to you that also has an impact on the impression other folks from other cities have. I don't think they're used to kicking in and sort of rolling up their sleeves and cleaning up in the same way you all did. And that's a positive impression to give. So hats off to you for really just painting that complete picture. So well done. And I also want to extend a thanks to the Village Club explicitly for making the facility available that night. I really do think it helped set a great tone for the evening, and again, contributed that surprised impression I think a lot of the attendees had.
By the way, I'll pass on the bill when it comes.
Yeah. Even if there's a bill, that doesn't mean they have to do it, right? So we still appreciate it. So with that said, I will turn it over to Director Workman.
No report tonight. No report from the police department, other than, I just want to kind of clarify, Mayor's, you'd entertain a budget amendment for a mounted patrol for the police department. Is that what I heard you say?
You know what? In all honesty, I would love to have mounted patrol out on the Highline Canal. I really would. I think, I think that it is such an important part of our community, and we really have a lot to do. And personally, I probably would support that.
Okay, that's all I needed to hear. Thank you.
I have a question for the chief in your report. I wasn't, this whole camera registry thing was interesting, and that evidently you're reaching out to the community. What percentage of our residents participate in that right now?
Not many. Not many. It's a new program for us. When we migrated to that new platform, that option became available. We've advertised it a few times. We have a handful of people. Really, the idea about, I think that what scares people is they think we're being given access to the camera. All we do is put it on a GIS map that says there's a camera there, so that if we need to go and seek information in a particular area, we don't have to go house to house to house to house. We could just blanket those people that have subscribed and ask them to look at their camera footage for us and send us anything relevant. So we'll continue to push that. Ideally, we've got some short-term goals on kind of where we would like to see that program advance, but we'll see what happens from this newest post.
It was an interesting part of your report.
I have no report.
No report. Save the date for Saturday, October 26th. We'll have drug take-back and flu shot clinic.
Thank you.
We have the 2025 proposed budget presentation on October 1st, and there are a couple of council members that won't be there. Please let me know if you have any questions. And I did want to make one note. There was an attachment that is going to be the transportation map, the locations, and that will be forthcoming. Jay and his team are going through the data right now, so it'll be ready later this fall.
So I guess I would just add one thing. We will be holding our first city council meeting in November. I know that that is election day, but we have a pretty important study session. And then the actual meeting agenda, we're trying to keep very light so that so we can wrap it up and be done before election results start to come in, and people can go do whatever you are interested in doing on election night. But that we will be having that meeting this year. And with that, I guess I would
Move to
entertain a motion to- So moved at 8:08 p.m.